Two important terms we need to be very familiar with in algebra are opposites and absolute value. When it says here 2 points are the same distance from the origin but on opposite sides of the origin are opposites. Basically, again, it revolves around the real number line. If we had a negative 2.5, you would say, or you could say, that is 2.5 units away from 0. Well, they have to be the same distance from the origin, that's 0 here, but on opposite sides. So if we start 0 again, but go over 2.5 units, we end up at a positive 2.5. Again, they're the same distance from 0. So negative 2.5 and 2.5 would be considered opposites. Basically, if it's positive, it becomes negative. If it's negative, it becomes positive. If I had a positive 101, what's its opposite? Well, it would be a negative 101. Okay, so opposites, one's positive, one's negative. You can kind of think of it that way. But understand that it means they're the same distance from 0 on the number line. Another important term is absolute value. Absolute value and opposite, some people get confused, so you want to make sure you really pay attention. The absolute value of a real number is the distance between the origin and the point representing the real number. Okay. Yes, we said opposites are the same distance, okay, but now we're just worried about the distance from 0, the origin. If you think about distance, when we talk about distance, we don't tell you to travel a negative 10 miles somewhere. We tell you to travel 10 miles and then give you a direction, whether it's to the right or to the left or north, east, south, or west. So think of absolute value in terms of distance. If I wanted to say, if I give you a point on a number line, like 4, how far away from 0 is 4? Well, hopefully you tell me 4 units. So the absolute value of 4 is 4. What about a negative? Let's say a negative 3 here, using this real number line. If I had a negative 3, okay, and I'd say, well, what's the absolute value of negative 3? Well, how far is it away from 0? And the answer is 3 units. Absolute value is always going to be positive, because again, we don't think of distance in terms of negative numbers. A way we represent that, ladies and gentlemen, is these two long lines here. When you see these lines, that means take the absolute value of a number. So right here I should have said the absolute value of 4 equals 4. And right here we would say the absolute value of a negative 3 equals 3. Again, these long lines just mean take the absolute value. Instead of writing it out, we can just write those lines. So again, two things we're working on right now, opposites and absolute value. Let's look at some examples. Notice it says to evaluate the expression. When we talk about evaluate, we mean get an answer. And if you look at part A here, oops, not that I can draw lines real well, but these two long lines say take the absolute value. So what you want to say is, how far away from 0 is 1/2? It's 1/2. That's it. Look at this one here. Again, these lines mean take the absolute value of 1.6. Well, how far away from 0 on a number line is 1.6? Well, it's 1.6 or 1 6/10 away from 0. Then notice this one down here. If you look at this one, there is a negative sign, but it's outside the line. So treat the absolute value lines like parentheses in order of operations. Do what's inside first. So what is the absolute value of 3? It's 3. If there's a negative out front, then we add it on. Okay? So do what's on the inside. If you had a question like this, if you had negative absolute value of a negative 3, again, do what's on the inside first. Do the absolute values first. What is the absolute value of negative 3? Well, it's 3. You do have to put the negative on. Okay? Using mental math to solve these problems. These are kind of important because we really have to understand what absolute value means. If you look at this, what this is asking is it says the absolute value of what number equals 4.3? Well, we know absolute value means how far away from 0 a number is. So one answer that should immediately come to mind is just 4.3. If we took the absolute value of 4.3, it would equal 4.3. But is there another answer? Is there another number that is 4.3 units away from 0 on the number line? Well, there is. Again, if you think of a number line, here's 0. If you go over here to 4.3, you can also move in this direction. So if you move 4.3 units in the other direction, you have a negative 4.3. So be careful in problems like this because there's going to be two answers. If you look at this one here, the absolute value of what number equals 3/4? Well, the easy answer is just to say 3/4, but we also have to have a negative 3/4 because both of these are 3/4 away from 0 on the number line.